Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new, my name's Olivia, and today I'm doing a bit of a different video. This has actually been really highly requested. A lot of people have DM'd me about this, and I put a little question box on my story a few weeks ago asking for like any video requests you guys had, and I got so many people asking for this video. So today I'm going to be doing my testimony. This is just gonna be like me chatting about my journey with faith, and yeah, I feel like it doesn't need much of an introduction. It is what it is. This is like pretty, I don't know what the word is, like I guess like it's pretty raw and like honest. I'm not gonna be like dressing it up or make it sound fancy because that's the reality. So yeah, I don't think I need to say anything else, so we'll just get into it. So I have my iPad here, which I feel like I say at the start of every video. I've just got some little points put down on it because I didn't want to forget anything that is important. So yeah, I'm just gonna get into it. So basically, if you don't know, I'm a Christian, and I basically have had, I wouldn't say like a completely typical like Christian upbringing, but like my mum is a Christian, my grandma is like a Christian, and my dad isn't, so I suppose that's why it's maybe not completely typical. I know a lot of people have like that sort of, just like their parents are Christian, they go to church, whatever. I feel like I sort of had that, but my dad's not a Christian, so if that makes any sense. So I kind of grew up, I don't know, like I grew up in this sort of Christian environment, and like I always went to church and Sunday school and like all that fun stuff. I've always been very involved in my church, and yeah, I think like I always knew God loved me. I always knew there was a God. I, for as long as I can remember, always believed that. But yeah, so I always like knew there was a God. I always knew God loved me. I always sort of had that like level of faith anyway. But I suppose it wasn't really until I was like 12 or 13 that I actually like became a Christian and actually like committed to God. So I can't remember, I always thought I was 12, but whenever I was thinking about it this morning, I think I might have been 13. But anyway, I was at this summer camp, and the reason I can't remember is because I went to literally the same one like 5 years in a row or something like that. So it was either my first or second year there, but I can't really remember. I'm pretty sure it was the summer before I went into year 8, so like I'm pretty sure I was 12, but anyway, it doesn't really matter. But I was like 12 or 13, and I was at this camp, and it wasn't the last night, but it was like maybe the fourth night, something like that. And one of our leaders was speaking, and his name was William, and he's such a great guy. And he was speaking, I don't even remember if this was meant to be the topic of his talk, but the kind of essence of it was about like putting God first, and like glorifying God in like what you're doing with your life. So yeah, he was talking about the fact that he had this like perfect life, and he had like, I can't remember if she was his girlfriend or his fiance, but if they weren't engaged, they were really serious, and they were like really in love, and I think they were living together. And he was just like in this really like happy relationship. He had a really, really good job. He was making quite a lot of money, and he had these like business partners or whatever. And he just, I don't know, like I think he just felt like, you know, I have great friends, I have like kind of have it all, if that makes sense. Like he was really like, to like anyone else, he would have looked like he was really happy and really had it together. And then like one day, obviously I can't really remember the details of this, I was literally like 12 years old, but one day he just kind of had this moment where he was like, none of this is for God. And it was just like such a realization for him that like his life had gone off in like such a strange direction that is not the direction he ever would have seen it to go in. And he just like, he was doing his job for the money, he didn't enjoy it, and it wasn't glorifying God. His group of friends were, I'm sure, good people, but none of them were Christians. They were bad influences on him. His relationship wasn't godly in any way. He just realised, he was like, all these things that I think are good things and people think are good things and that seem to make my life great are not good, and none of them are making God happy. And he quit his job. He left his girlfriend or his fiance. He like cut things off with all his friends. He literally just ended it in like every sense of the word, you know. And it was just such like a drastic thing to do. Like anyone would have thought, you know, it was just such like a, I don't even know what the word is, but it was just such like a massive thing. It was just like everything. Do you know what I mean? And I don't know, I remember hearing that and thinking like, wow, and I just felt so convicted, because I mean, I was 12 years old. I wasn't like bad in any way, really. Like I was just like a normal 12-year-old, but I didn't do anything with any particular conviction or any particular reason. And I don't know, you might think like, for flip's sake, you were 12 years old, like you don't need to do things with conviction, but I firmly believe that like literally Jesus could come back tomorrow. He could come back in 2 minutes. He could come back in the middle of me filming this video. Like I firmly believe that we have absolutely no idea when that's going to happen. And I remember sitting there, like I was literally 12 years old. I remember sitting there in this talk in floods of tears. And to be fair, I'm not sure there was a dry eye in that entire room. Like everyone was so emotional that night. But I was just sitting there like in floods and floods of tears, and I just felt God saying like, could you do that? And again, like obviously it's not like I was, you know, some amazing businessman and I didn't have like a fiance and whatever, but like I had stuff, like I had friends, I had family, I had all these activities that I did, I had school, I had a life, you know, as much as a 12-year-old can. And I just thought like, if God asked me today, like if he said give it all up and go and like live in some remote area where like they've never heard the gospel and go and tell those people about it, like would you do it? And I remember just sitting there thinking like, I don't know if I could. And I think it was at that moment I just realised like I really needed to make a change. My life really didn't have a purpose, you know. I was coasting very much so. I was never like a pushover, but I just sort of let things happen. I didn't really, like I said, I didn't really do things with much conviction. So anyway, that night I just like cried and cried and cried, and I prayed and I prayed, and I just knew like I really had to make a change. I really had to do something about this. And yeah, so that was the night that I would say like I became a Christian, really. But I think, I don't know, like for some people I think they become a Christian, and not that they find it easy, because it's not supposed to be easy, but it is quite a natural, like almost overnight they become this like not really good person, because there is no like good person, but they don't find it as hard as other people to just sort of like go out of those ways and make those changes. And I think that's maybe why this guy William, who was doing this talk, I think that's maybe why he did such like a drastic change, because he knew if he tried to just sort of make small changes and do little things, he maybe wouldn't do it. So I kind of then felt like that. I feel like for me it was definitely a slow process, and to be fair, I do think that is probably true for the majority of people. I feel like the majority of people don't have like an overnight change in everything they are. I feel like most people have like a slow transition to Christianity, if that makes sense. And I don't mean that in a heart sense, because in a heart sense it has to be a change, and it has to be like night and day in your attitude, in your heart. It has to be, or it's not real. So in my heart, like I wanted this, and it's how I felt, do you know what I mean? Like it was important to me, but I found it harder to like make the physical changes in my life. And And I think that's why, like, sometimes I do question, like, did I really become a Christian that night? Because I feel like sometimes I think it shouldn't have been that hard, especially at like 12 years old. It's like I said, it's not like I was having to give up a business and you know, fiance and all my friends and like an amazing life that I'd built. I was 12 years old. Like, I really didn't have that much to deal with, like you would think. So I don't know, sometimes I do question that, but I don't really think I'll ever know. But I do think that was the night that I like became a Christian. Yeah, like I was saying, for me it was a very slow process. I didn't have like a big overnight change in terms of the things I was doing, because like I said, I didn't, you know, I was 12 years old. I tried my best at stuff, and I tried a lot harder after that night, but I don't feel like I was fixed overnight, which I don't think most people are, so like that's normal. But yeah, and then we'll fast forward a couple of years, because I didn't really think anything that drastic happened in those couple of years. I did like a bunch of different mission trips, and when I was 15, I went to Romania, and that was amazing. I feel like when you're in, I don't even know, when you're in like a place where people have nothing, they just have so much more faith. And I think it's so interesting because those people have nothing and they have no means of getting anything. And when you're that desperate for things like basic like water and food, when you're that desperate, you have no choice but to have faith that it'll happen. And I think that's one really interesting thing. I was talking to one of my friends about this the other day. Like, I don't think that when we pray for things, we always have 100% faith they will happen. And I think that that is like, I don't know, I think that's like maybe why they don't always. And obviously I'm not an expert, I don't really know everything. Well, I definitely don't know everything, but I feel like when people have no option but to have faith and to genuinely believe that the healing or the, you know, provision that they are praying for is going to happen, it's more likely to happen. And when we limit God and we only put him in this little box and we say like, okay, God, you can have this part of my life and this part of my life and this part, but I'm keeping these parts for myself, I feel like that's when we have problems, because we aren't giving God everything. And so that's something I really learned when I was in Romania especially. And I feel like through those couple of years, from like I was 12 to 14-ish, that's pretty much what I was doing. Probably longer, probably more like 12 to 16 really. I was putting God in a box. I gave him some parts of my life, and the rest of the parts I thought like I can do these parts on my own. And then I had a bit of a like stark lesson, and God just said like, you can't do any of it on your own, so stop trying. So yeah, when I was 14, I got into a relationship, which I've kind of mentioned briefly before. And so I got into this relationship with a boy who was not Christian. And it was just too hard. Like I said, I sort of, that like time from when I became a Christian when I was 12, I did find it difficult to like make big changes. And I remember hearing so many talks at so many different seminars and camps and like different events about like dating as a Christian or whatever. And I know like you're probably thinking like the girl was 14, like chill out, it can't have been that serious. But I was kind of obsessed at that time. Like I was really obsessed with like what other people thought of me and how other people perceived me. And a massive way that showed itself was that I needed validation, and the most likely source was going to be from boys. So I really became a little bit obsessed, and it was definitely not like the best mindset to be in getting into a relationship. So I suppose maybe that's why it ended up not being a great relationship. But anyway, I got into this relationship when I was 14, and it was just too hard. There was too much temptation. And I don't know, if you guys want like a whole video on that specifically, like temptations of a relationship or whatever, I can do that. But so I'm not gonna like go into it too much in this video. But I will say there's a reason that God wants believers to be with other believers. And that's something I had been told so many times at all of these events and seminars and different things. I'd just been told it over and over and over and over, and I thought, I'm the person that can be different. I'm the person that can make this work. I'll be fine. Do you know what I mean? I feel like we maybe all thought that. I definitely thought that. But it's true. There's a reason that God wants believers to be with other believers, and that is they have different values than you do. And what's important to you will never be important to them, no matter how much they say it will, no matter how much they say they'll try. People inherently are not good. People are inherently selfish, and anything that is good in people is of God. It's not of them. So without God, we're not good, if that makes sense. So like, we're flawed, we're not naturally good. People are inherently selfish. So whether you think so or not, the person that you're with is not going to put you before themselves. And I think that's one really interesting thing that is so different in like human relationships and a relationship between a person and God, because God literally sent his son to die. Like, he literally died for us. Like, that's crazy. Do you know what I mean? Like, there are very, very few human relationships where someone feels that strongly about you that they would literally die for you. And they might say they would, but if it really came down to it, do you know what I mean? So anyway, what I'm trying to say is, whether they think it or not, whether you think it or not, whether it's conscious or subconscious, people are selfish, and they will always at the back of their mind be prioritizing themselves over you. And like I said, this is the reason that God asks believers to be with other believers. He's not trying to spoil your fun. He's not trying to make you miss out on all the good parts of life, and he's not trying to make you feel left out of your friends because you're the only one not in a relationship, because there's no nice Christian boys. First of all, God doesn't want us to get hurt. And I promise you, I know from experience, I promise you, being in a relationship with a non-believer will be a lot more painful when it ends. I promise it will. It just will. Someone who doesn't have the same priorities as you, and someone who doesn't value the same things as you, is going to cause you a lot more pain than someone who does. And the second thing is, God wants us to have true intimacy, and I mean that very much in an emotional sense as well as a physical sense. He wants us to have true intimacy if we are meant for marriage, because we're not all meant for marriage, but if that is what is in God's plan for you, he wants you to have true intimacy with that one person. And if you've had that intimacy or attempted that intimacy with another person previously, it will really massively impact that marriage when it does happen, or if it does happen. Obviously I'm not married. I don't have like experience obviously in that sense, but I have friends who've been in this position, and not just marriages, but I have friends who've been in relationships with non-believers and had that intimacy, and it really puts a big strain on subsequent relationships with other believers. It's just a fact, it just does. So yeah, I feel like, yeah, if like, I believe that the true intimacy and having been close with somebody else can have a really massive impact on true intimacy with another person. I feel like it's something that God reserves for marriage for a reason, because marriages aren't supposed to end. I know they do, but they're not supposed to. There's a reason that he reserves it for marriage, and that reason is that it's meant to be had with two people between them and not with anyone else, not with anyone outside of that marriage, whether it's subsequent or previous. So yeah, anyway, this isn't a video about relationships. So yeah, that relationship had just become really unhealthy. I'm not going to go into the details of that because that's not necessary. But it was just really toxic for me. I didn't realise it at the time. I think even when it ended, at the time I thought like, no, it was perfect. I was so happy. I really wasn't. But yeah, it was not great. And then it ended. And like I said, I didn't realise at the time how toxic it was, but I had become so reliant on this person to make me feel literally anything. God was very much no longer my priority. Because I did literally everything in my power to please this other person who ultimately would never be pleased by me. They would never be pleased with me. So when that relationship ended, my world as I knew it ended, because I'd spent like 2.5 years of my life with this person. And I feel like, so I was 14 when the relationship began and I was 16 when it ended. And I think that period of time, maybe it's different for everyone, but I feel like that period of time, I know this from like myself but also my friends, I feel like it was a very formative couple of years. And what I mean by that is I feel like when you're 14, I feel like you're very young. You don't necessarily know very much about like the world. For me, that was like the time when I was just about to start GCSEs. Well, not just about, but like nearly starting GCSEs. And then the whole like GCSE couple of years and like exams and pressures and things. I don't know, I just feel like you were really forced to grow up a lot in those couple of years, and I just feel like they were very formative years. And instead of growing on my own, focusing on myself, focusing on my own development, I really grew with this boy. I grew with another person, and I became a completely different person at the end of the relationship than I was at the start, which is obviously normal. But because that was such a formative time in my life, at the beginning of it, I had no idea what I wanted and who I was. And then at the end, I did know what I wanted and who I was, but it was all rooted in another person. It wasn't me, it was another person. So then when that relationship ended, I just had no idea who I was. I didn't know how to be me without him. And basically that relationship ended around the same time that I finished my GCSEs. And my GCSEs were that was probably the worst 2 months of my life for a lot of reasons, but this relationship was very bad those couple of months. And I had my GCSEs, which I feel like was such a stressful time, like in terms of the exams, because I don't even know, I feel like it was just too many things to be expected to do well. Like I was doing, did I do 10 or 11 GCSEs? I think I did 10. 10 GCSEs, but I did double word science, so it was like 11 subjects. And I was expected to learn all of them. I was expected to do well in all of them. Like, that is so unnatural. First of all, no one is going to be good. Well, some people are, but most people are not going to be good at 11 different things. It's just not normal. And then second of all, to have to expect to split your brain and your energy and your motivation over so many different things is so difficult. So anyway, that was like the worst. I had like 22 exams in the space of like 6 weeks. It was horrible. So anyway, that was like really bad. Around that time I was very sick. I have quite bad anxiety. And my anxiety during the time of my GCSEs was the worst it has ever been. Again, like I said, massive combination of GCSEs and that relationship. So my anxiety was the worst it had ever been, and it was coming out very much in a physical sense, and I was really ill. I was sick every day for 2 months, without question, every day. It was horrible. I would genuinely not wish that on my worst enemy. It was the worst 2 months ever. So yeah, basically that was all going on around the same time. I then had another mission trip the year after I went to Romania. So like it was pretty much 2 weeks after that relationship ended, I went on this mission trip to Moldova. And while that was a great time in some ways, it was also 2 of the most difficult weeks of my life. Again, for lots of different reasons which I won't go into, but it was just really difficult for me, and I really struggled. And yeah, so the combination of the relationship ending, GCSEs, that trip, my anxiety being the worst it had ever been, me being sick, I was sick the whole time I was in Moldova as well, and then at the end of that summer I got my GCSE results, which I was super happy with, and then my school basically said, they're crap, you're crap, we don't want you anymore. So that's so dramatic, that's not what they said, but basically, I mean a lot of people watching this will know what school I went to, but it was just like a really not a great place for me. The school I went to before I did sixth form was, I don't know how to word it, it was like basically just the kind of place where they like people to be good at things, they like people to be really good at things, and they like people to be really good at everything. And if you weren't, then they weren't really that interested in you, which is fine, that's on them. But yeah, they basically, that took quite a toll on my mental health as well. So that was again around the same time, and they told me then whenever I got my GCSE results, I've said this in so many different videos, but they told me I couldn't do the subjects I wanted to do, and at the time I wanted to study medicine. That was my brief like 2 months of wanting to study medicine, but they didn't want to let me do those subjects. That sucked. I said bye, that was that. So again, another thing, moving skills. So all in the space of 2 months I had like a 2.5 year relationship end, that at the time that person was like the most important person in my life. I had my GCSEs, I had like 2.5 months of being sick all the time, I had that mission trip which was just like a really hard couple of weeks, and I had a massive change, moving skills. So I got to a very low place. I'm not gonna sugarcoat that. I was really unhappy, and I was just like not doing well in myself. I like really struggled for a while, and like anyone who struggles like with their mental health, you'll know like it's very much like a spectrum. Like some days you're really good, sometimes you're awful, but there's a lot in between as well. So the past few years have been like a bit of a journey for me. Oh my gosh, I said I wasn't gonna cry. But yeah, so that was the lowest I've ever been. That I moved schools in the September, and probably that September October was the lowest mentally I've ever been. I was really not well. It was around that time I was diagnosed with depression as well, so but I was very much in denial about that. I was like, no, I'm not depressed. I definitely was. But yeah, so anyway, I was in a very low place. I went to some very dark parts of myself, and it was just not a great time in general. So again, I'm not really going to dwell on that because I'm through it, I got through it, but it was, I just didn't know how to be me anymore, like I said, and slowly I started to realise that I didn't need anyone else in order to be me. Who I was not somewhere in another person. Who I was somewhere in myself. I just had to find it. After that relationship, I felt worthless completely. Not only had I lost, like I said, arguably in my eyes at that time in my life, the most important person in my life, but I'd lost every ounce of self-worth and sense of belief in myself. To me, in my opinion, I was useless, I was worthless, I was unlovable, I was a really massive burden to anyone in my life. I was ugly, I was too big, I was too loud, I definitely took up too much space. But Jesus gave me an identity that says I'm loved, I'm beautiful, I'm worthy, I'm gifted. He loves me so much. He literally died for me, like literally. And that made me think I must be worth something. And I feel like that was quite like a pivotal, I was gonna say a pivotal time, but it didn't really just happen at once. Like I said, it wasn't like overnight or anything. That was just like something I started to realize. And you know, I felt like I got really into my relationship with God, which is again like at the start why I said I became a Christian when I was 12, but I feel like I'd never faced anything difficult enough to have to rely on God. And like I said before, I don't think that when we pray for things, if we don't believe, I don't think they're going to happen. And I feel like sometimes you have to go to a real place of desperation in order to fully have faith in God. And I feel like at that point in my life, I was so desperate. I was so low and unhappy. I needed God or I was going to die. That was it. Like there was nothing else. So yeah, he told me I add value to the world and to my relationships and that I needed to stay around. That was the long and short of it. I didn't want to stay around. I was happy enough just to say goodbye. But he told me I needed to stay. So, oh my gosh, I need to chill out. Okay, so yeah. And he blessed me with like really incredible people. Yes, he did. And without them, I really don't believe I'd be here today. But he gave me those people and he kept me alive. Like there's no two ways about it. I'm alive today because of Jesus. And I feel like I've only ever like had this real like conversation with like two people in my life, but here we go, I'm putting it on the internet. This feels strange. But yeah, like I definitely I'm alive today because of Jesus. And that's the truth. I don't know if that sounds like really, I don't know, whatever, but that's the truth. And I'm not gonna, like I said, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. So yeah, he blessed me with really incredible people, people that did so much for me. They'll never even understand how much they did, but that was him. Like he did that. He gave me those people and he gave them the words I needed to hear and the things I needed. That was him. Like, and I've never felt closer to Jesus, which is so ironic. It was like the worst time in my life, but I've never felt closer to Jesus than I did at that time. And that's what I mean. Like I feel like sometimes you really do just have to get to a point where like you're so desperate, like you have no other options. Like I was really out of options. I had no other way that I could see out of how I was feeling. So yeah, that's the kind of I feel like the most important part of my testimony. I was literally on like the brink. Like I was really happy just to say bye and like not have to deal with how I was feeling anymore, not have to be in pain anymore. I'm sorry, I really didn't think I was gonna be this emotional. I bet I look great right now. But yeah, so I became a Christian that night at camp and I made a change. But for me, and I believe for most people, it doesn't just take one change, it doesn't just take one prayer. And I do think that sometimes we need to get to the most desperate points where there's nothing left of ourselves, so we have no choice but to go to Jesus. And it's only then that I think we really understand how much he can do for us. So yeah, I mean, like, it's never going to be easy. It's never going to be like you just make one choice or one prayer, you do one thing and that's you're sorted. Like Jesus promised us, it's never going to be easy. We're not of this world. We're not meant to be here. We're God's children, and like, this world is always going to be uncomfortable, and if it's not, you're not doing it right, because you should be uncomfortable, because we're not meant to be here. We should be in heaven. That's our home, and it's not going to be easy is what I'm trying to say. But he's with us. We have a God who will literally never leave us. He's with us always, and the reward we will get in heaven, like, see, whenever I think about it, my mind just goes. Like, I can't, it's so much, like, to think about. It's like such, like, the reward we will get for being a good and a faithful servant is just mind-blowing. Like, it's incredible when you think about the fact that we will literally get to live with Jesus. Like, we'll get to live with the person that created the world and created everything, and I'm just so freaking excited for that time. So yeah, it's not gonna be easy, obviously, but that's it, and I think it's gonna be worth it. I know it's gonna be worth it. I don't know why I'm saying I think, I know. And yeah, so I feel like then now I'm just kind of doing stuff. I feel like this last year's been strange because it's been really hard to witness in obviously lockdown and whatever. It's been lonely, but I feel like it's been another time where I've kind of not had much choice but to rely on God. This year's been really hard for me. It's also been one of the best years of my life, but it's been kind of hard the way I think it has been for everybody. So I feel like I have felt close to God. So that's where I'm at right now. And yeah, I feel like that's it. I'm not sure there's anything else I need to expand on. I'm sure whenever I go to edit this, and whenever I'm like looking back or whatever on it, I'm sure there'll be things I've forgotten to say, or things I'm thinking like, why didn't you say that? But for now, I feel like this is it. If you have made it to the end of this video, thank you so much for watching. It really means the world to me when people like care about me, and this is like the biggest thing in my life, so especially if people care about this, that's pretty amazing. And yeah, if you're feeling like affected by anything I've said, then I'm gonna leave some like numbers in the description box. If you feel like you need help, please reach out, send me a DM, send a message to one of those phone numbers. Personally, I've used Samaritans in the past, and I feel like they are incredible people. So if you feel like it's weird and you feel like I'm not sick enough to need help, you are. If you're thinking that, you are, I promise you. So yeah, I'm gonna leave some numbers in the description. If you feel like you need help, please reach out. You're so loved by so many people, but by Jesus. And just think about that for a second. Like, the actual person that created the world, that created little tiny ladybugs and created little blades of grass, but also created flipping like giraffes and created us, that person loves you. And yeah, I feel like I don't need to say anything more than that. That's pretty amazing in my opinion. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Like I said, if you have any other like faith related videos that you'd like to see, please let me know, send me a DM or leave a comment or whatever. But yeah, I'm gonna stop rambling. Thank you so much for watching this video. I love you guys, and I will see you next time. Bye.